Today I'm kicking off a new series of videos. Retro Jams. Yeah, that sounds like I say jam, J-A-M, but it's gems, you know? Like diamonds? But it's not about jewelry. Okay, that was even bad according to dad joke standards. In these videos, I'm going to pick a movie, a series, or a game that I think is old enough to be retro, but that is underappreciated in my opinion. Or maybe I just want to talk about said movie, series, or game. That's also possible. For the first video in this series, I want to talk about a movie that both scared and fascinated me when I was a kid. Ridley Scott's Legend. Let's have a look. Legend was a 1985 fantasy movie directed by Ridley Scott and starring Tom Cruise and Tim Curry. It's a dark fairy tale based on an original script by William Hjortsberg and Ridley Scott himself. Ridley Scott had just finished Alien, and at that point he had walked away from the Dune movie, which David Lynch eventually directed. The thing is, he had always wanted to make a fantasy or fairy tale movie, but when he started his career, it wasn't really a genre that would reach the big audiences, which definitely had changed by the early 80s. So he found himself a scriptwriter, William Hjortsberg. That name. William was actually a novelist that had some screenwriting experience. They started writing on the scripts just before Ridley Scott was going to start with Blade Runner, and by the time Blade Runner was done, they had their first draft of the script. And it was a huge draft of the script and a very dark draft of the script. Yeah, the studio wasn't having it, so it needed to be reworked. 15 times in total. But in the end, they managed to trim the fat, and they ended up with a story about a princess, Lily, played by Mia Sara, who was only 15 at that point, and the boy that she fancied and that happened to live in the woods, Jack, played by Tom Cruise. Tom Cruise just had done Risky Business, and he was on his way to do Top Gun, so I think Ridley Scott got him at the perfect time, before he got too expensive. And according to sources, they had a very interesting shortlist for actors that might be playing Jack. Some of them very surprising. First off, there was Johnny Depp, which kinda makes sense. But then you have Robert Downey Jr., that would have been a very sassy Jack. And they also were thinking about Jim Carrey. Alrighty then. Now seriously, that would have been a very different movie. Now back to the story. Jack loved showing Lily around in the forest that he lived in. He let her convince him to show the place where the last two unicorns in the world are hanging out. Now he does warn her that they need to stay away, so they're watching from a distance, but Lily escapes and she runs up to the unicorns and pets one of them. Big no-no in the whole forest fantasy thing. But to be fair, when I was a kid watching the movie, I never really got why everybody was so upset with Lily. On the other hand, what Jack and Lily did not know was that Blix, Pox, and Blunder were hiding in the bushes ready to strike. Now, Blix and Blunder are goblins, and Pox, I think the best way to describe him is a pig man. Yeah. In any case, these three miscreants are working for the Lord of Darkness, or Darkness for short. And Darkness wants those unicorns dead, because once all the unicorns in the world have died, the sun will never rise again. You might already have figured this out by his name, but he does love darkness. So, I mean, everybody has their life goals. So what they kind of did is use the princess to have the unicorns lower their guard a little bit, but once that those pointy-headed horses were distracted, Blix hit one of them with a dart. Never a good thing, because things go really bad at that point. There's pointy bits being cut off, Darkness having these self-reflecting chats, and of course, a princess was abducted. So Jack sets out to save the princess, and to stop Darkness from ruining his town. And he gets the help of his forest pals, which include a very aggressive German elf called Gump, his fairy friend Una, and two dwarfs called Brown Tom and Screwball. I'm pretty sure that last one is also a cocktail. A pretty good cocktail. In any case, I'm not going to spoil the rest of the story, but overall it's a pretty solid tale, especially in the director's cut, but I'll get back to that in a second. First, let me explain why I think this is one of those retro jams. And one of those reasons is that it has this nice patina of nostalgia, especially for kids that grew up in the 80s and 90s. You probably saw this movie at least once. But on top of that, it's just a very solid Ridley Scott movie. It has all those typical Ridley Scott elements, like a lot of atmosphere and a very distinctive visual style. And that style has been copied since. But at that time, it was very original. It was unique. It was not something that we had seen before. Ridley Scott just managed to build a world that felt real, and that was due to all the little details that he put in there, because it oozed purpose. And I'm not just talking about the sets. The sets are amazing, but so are the characters. Both the evil and the good characters look very distinct, and each has their own attitude, which works really well in that world. Now, when it comes to all the looks, the prosthetics and whatnot, they hire Rob Bottin, the special effects artist for movies like RoboCop, Total Recall, and John Carpenter's The Thing. Another character he created is Meg Mucklebones, played by Robert Picardo, the Doctor from Star Trek Voyager. That suit looked amazing. Apparently it was a huge pain in the ass. And so was the costume for Darkness. Now, Darkness is being played by Tim Curry, something I did not realize up till very recently. It is an outstanding performance, yet you don't recognize him immediately. He did an amazing job. And Darkness is one of those characters that has been living in the back of my head ever since I was a kid. When I'm drawing, when I'm writing stories, he'll always be lingering around there. And that has a lot to do with his attitude, but also the way he looks. You have this, 2.5 meter tall red man with two huge black shiny horns. It was a very unique look that we hadn't seen up till then. Again, something that was definitely copied afterwards, but that was the first time I saw a creature like that, and it stuck. It wasn't really like it scared me. Well, it kind of did, but let's say it didn't scare me the way Freddy Krueger did. And that was because there was purpose in the evil of Darkness. And in a way, he was very fragile. They kind of made it clear that he has his vulnerabilities right from the start. Again, something very unique for villains back in the day, especially in movies. I think it's more of a theater thing. Darkness was more of a stage performance, and I think that's why Tim Curry was perfect for the role. On top of that, there's a lot of symbolism hidden within the movie, as is the case with every fairy tale, I guess. One scene I'll never forget is the dancing scene. If you've seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about. It's where Princess Lily is getting seduced by Darkness. Not necessarily Darkness, the character, but just, the evil side. And she gets seduced into dancing with this dark female creature. It is this whole long, elaborate back and forth. But while they're dancing, you get these unique angles on the whole set. And at one point, there's this table ornament, which looks like, the one of those little angels with the fat cheeks, but it's a little devil, I guess. And it just comes to life and looks over at them dancing. And that freaked me out so much as a kid that for years, every time I saw one of those fat-cheeked little angels, I was wondering if it was going to come to life or not. So yeah, that movie definitely had an impact on me. Clearly. And the fun thing is, now there's an even better version. See, as it goes with studio movies, once you have that first cut, it gets tested on audiences. And turns out that the first cut that they had made did not test well. Now, some of the feedback was feedback that Ridley Scott could live with, but then the studio came in with their own suggestions. And as you can imagine, the suggestions were not the direction that Ridley Scott wanted to take. For instance, they wanted to make it a kid-friendly movie. They wanted to target it at a younger audience. They also felt that Gump, the elf character, sounded too German. But it turns out they didn't really have an issue with all Germans because they wanted some other Germans to make their soundtrack. The original score, the one that Ridley Scott had ordered and was 100% behind, was made by Jerry Goldsmith. It was dark, it was very fitting for the movie. Perfect. The studio, however, wanted the German electro band, Tangerine Dream, to make an alternate score. So there was a lot of back and forth between Ridley Scott and the studio, and it came with a compromise. The US release of the movie was with the Tangerine Dream score, while the rest of the world, us, got the Jerry Goldsmith score. So Germans got to enjoy the movie with the Goldsmith score, while the Americans had to settle for a score by the German band Tangerine Dream. The movie industry. Beautiful, right? And look, that wasn't Ridley Scott's only problem on this movie. There were a ton of issues during the recording. There were, of course, stuff like the prosthetics, the suits, but there were also birds that just kind of took in the whole studio. And 10 days before the movie would wrap, the whole studio burned down while they were all out for lunch. Luckily, nobody got hurt, but yeah, that was a mess. All that just to end up with a movie that Ridley Scott was not happy with. And he wasn't the only one. Tom Cruise for years did not want to talk about that movie because he wasn't happy with the final cut. I mean, that was the cut that we as kids got to see in the 80s. But then in 2002, Ridley Scott got a chance to do a director's cut for Universal. It included the original Goldsmith score, had some extra scenes, a longer dancing scene, and the ending was different. And according to a lot of people, it is the best version of that movie. In other words, all is well again, both in the fantasy world and in Hollywood. The darkness of the studio execs in the 80s was vanquished. And us 80s kids now have two movies to enjoy. And I got them both on Blu-ray. Do I even have a Blu-ray player? But anyways, guys, tell me, have you seen the movie? And if you've seen both of them, which was your favorite? Let me know in the comments. For this video, however, that was it. If you like this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up. It really helps me to grow this channel. And make sure to subscribe, because I'm going to be back with a new video next week. Until then, take care of yourself, take care of each other. Bye bye.